spent the next 5 years working for Bill Clinton and Al Gore on the White House staff as the deputy director of the Science and Technology Office in the White House. And
How was that?
it was intense, and it was an amazing experience, where you get up and you read the paper and you know what your day is going to be like.
What was the number one thing you learned working with Al Gore?
Two things, I would say. The first is that you can take on really big, hard issues and make a difference. Because that was something that for the vice president, for Al, was the signature.
So same question. What's the single most important thing that you learned working with Bill Clinton?
A lot of things I learned from Bill Clinton, but if I had to pick one thing, it was what made Bill Clinton a once in a generation politician.
Yeah.
And what that was is that he was as comfortable having a debate about.
Did you know there's a technology that's actually an app on your phone that uses sound waves to tell your brain what you want your brain to do? We had a young man that was on a guest on our podcast, the Mike Litton Experience, who had a traumatic brain injury. He was sleeping 3 hours a night. He's using NewCalm now and he's sleeping more. Go to newcalm.com, Mike15 promo code. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go today.
Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience podcast. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. Mike is passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
Tim Newell, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. I'm super excited for our time together today. And like we talked about before we hit record, everybody has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. So with your permission, we're going to start with where you were born, go up to today, and then we want to talk about the amazing things you're doing with GreenFi and how your company is giving back to this Mother Earth of ours. Thanks again for being here.
Well, thank you for having me, Mike. I really appreciate it. It's a really special opportunity to be able to connect with your listeners and to talk through the path that I took to get here, and which I can look back and say, well, that was obvious, and it was not obvious anywhere along the line. But
Right.
But thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. And it's amazing when you look back and there's no way you could have written that script, right? It's like, oh, I couldn't have foretold any of that, So
Nor am I sure I would write it again.
yeah, exactly, right?
Any
Right.
of us would, so it's great.
So where were you born?
I was born in Nuremberg, Germany.
Wow.
My father was a U.S. Army officer, and he was serving on the border, and with a tank company.
Yeah.
And I was born in Nuremberg and spent the first two and a half years of my life in Germany.
Wow. And then after that, where did you go?
So after that, came back to the States. My father was stationed in Fort Knox, Kentucky, and which, besides being the famous home of the Gold Vault for the United
Right.
States, is also the home of a very large military installation for the
Very large, one of the largest in the world. Yeah.
one of the largest in the world, and the home of the training center for all the armor units in the Army, and started school there. Started the first school there. Relatively soon after that, my father was assigned to go to Africa to serve as an advisor in Libya at the time.
Wow.
And so, with U.S. Army forces who were serving as advisors to Libya, and so my brothers and I had two brothers at that time, we decamped back up here to where I'm coming to you today in Vermont,
Hmm.
to family's farm in Vermont, and where we lived while we were waiting for him to come back from Africa.
Wow.
And interesting story is I have a picture somewhere of my father hosting a Thanksgiving dinner as a U.S. Army officer hosting his counterparts,
Hmm.
and sitting at the table is a young unknown officer at that time, Muammar Gaddafi,
Wow. Who ended
um,
up taking over Libya
who ended up taking over Libya.
and ran it with an iron
Yeah,
fist.
he
Wow.
did. He did.
My goodness.
And be careful who we train.
No kidding, right? And who
Yeah,
you have Thanksgiving with.
that's right.
So, so what was your favorite thing about growing up there?
About well, I grew up all over the place.
Right.
So growing up in the army is is like living in a small town, and that same small town changes and goes all around the country and all around the world.
Right.
Um, and it's a company town, so
Mhm.
everyone works for the same employer. And and while you move around a lot, I think I counted one time, and I think I lived in. By the time I was out of college, I had lived in 20 different places.
Wow.
And um, but you make friends quickly. You learn to make friends quickly,
Mhm.
and then you move and you make a new set of friends, and maybe move again, and suddenly you're seeing the same friends you saw before,
Right.
who are connecting with you. It is a way of growing up that is has a couple characteristics that I think any Army brat or Navy brat or Air Force brat would say, as they would call us, is one, it's very much rooted in family, because
Mhm.
that's what you know, because you're always moving around, and so it's always your family that is kind of the root of your existence.
Right.
And that definitely carried with me through my life. And the other part about it is that it's very much the identity of your family and the community you're in is very much rooted in service.
Mhm.
And so because you're within an organization that is all about national service,
Right.
and that definitely carried with me through my career, and at different times was very important to me in making choices. We were in Vermont for a year when my father came back. Um, we spent some time in Washington D.C., and then we were back to Fort Knox, and uh, spent our spent a couple more years there. And then relatively soon after that, my father was off to Vietnam,
Mm.
and um, and so there we were, my mother, my two brothers, my baby sister at the time, and you're on your own again for a year or more.
Yeah.
And um, but at the time, all of my friends lived the same way,
Mhm.
and so it didn't feel like it was something strange. Felt like that's just the way we live.
Yeah. Just kind of normal stuff.
Yeah, this is just the way we live.
So, where did you attend high school?
I attended high school in two different places. I started high school in Kansas,
Mhm.
in Fort Riley, Kansas,
Yeah.
and I finished in a little town, Junction City, Kansas, where the football stadium holds more people than there are in the whole town,
Yeah.
practically. Um, and then I finished up high school in almost the exact opposite of that, which is in Fairfax, Virginia, just
Wow.
outside of Washington D.C., when my father was stationed at the Pentagon,
Yeah.
and which at the time was the largest high school I think still is largest high school in Virginia. I think there are 4 or 5 thousand kids just in that high school, and it's an example of your big suburban
Mhm.
high school, very competitive, huge sports programs. And so I experienced two of those different things: rural Kansas, and then the big suburban high school in Virginia.
Did you have a favorite sport in high school?
Uh, I had three sports that I spent most of my time in growing
Mhm.
up. One was football,
Mhm.
and played played football in high school. Played football in college, and track, and I also grew up riding and showing horses.
Oh, there you go.
And so rodeoed a little bit, did a lot of showing, did some polo later on, It was something that I was introduced by my mother
Hmm.
and by my grandmother, who all were writers, and
Hmm.
and it was just part of my life.
That's so cool. In high school, did you have a favorite subject?
I was split between the sciences. I
Hmm.
love physics. I love biology. I love chemistry. Those things, and um, and also literature and anything associated with literature. And
What did
so
you What did you love?
both of those sides were both of those subject areas are ones I really loved.
Gotcha. What was it you loved about science, and what was it that you loved about literature?
Um, Literature was about exploring worlds.
Hmm.
Well, it is about exploring language as a way of expression. Like, I'm a terrible musician. I'm constantly fascinated by people who can do music. It's like some weird alchemic magic to me that someone can take notes and put them together
Right.
and then cause you to feel something. I can't imagine how you can do that. I'm always
Like
so impressed
magic, you
with people who do it. It's like
know?
magic. In the same way that I'm incredibly impressed with and bad at um, people who can paint or sculpt,
Hmm.
who can take a lump of clay and turn it into something itself magic,
Yeah.
or who can take some water and some colors and create this magic image that transports you somewhere.
Hmm.
So for me, my way of self-expression was words,
Yeah.
and being able to put words together in a way that could bring meaning and transport people to somewhere and let them explore those worlds. Um, that's what I loved about literature. In the sciences, it is an exploration of a different side, different different kind. It is the exploration of um, the world we live in, the world inside us, the world outside of us. Including out in space, and and I was always fascinated with how does that world work,
Yeah.
and even down to the tiniest processes. How does it really work? And math was always something that I took to,
Hmm.
and so modeling the world is just a way of applying math to the world around us.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
In high school, did you have a favorite teacher?
I did. I had a teacher early in high school, Mr. Greenwood, and and he was one of those teachers who just was able to inspire the his students, and he taught a variety of the sciences, and it was one of those experiences that just set me on a path,
Hmm.
because it took what was an interest and turned into a passion. How do you dive into these subjects?
Yeah.
How do you understand them? And
Sounds like
so
he reached you.
he's always the memory of how he inspired that has always stayed with me.
Sounds like he reached you in a major way.
He did.
Yeah. That's cool. I love it when teachers do that.
Yeah.
That's a cool thing.
And
So you
do you remember a teacher who inspired you that way?
1000%.
Yeah.
He my I farmed in Oklahoma with my grandfather for 9 years.
Mhm.
And when we moved from Oklahoma to California, I made a deal with my parents, and that was that every day of the summer I would spend on the farm in Oklahoma, which meant that my mother had to register me for classes in high school because that
Mhm.
was a couple of weeks before you started, right? And I came back the last day of summer. I flew in
Mhm.
and went to school the next day. And so there was an elective that I had, and my mother elected for me to be in this class. And she called me and she said, I chose this elective, and if you don't like it, I want you to try it. If you don't like it, you can drop it. And I said, okay, what is it? And she said, speech. And I said, Mom, I don't have a lisp. I don't have a stutter anymore. I don't, people actually consider me somewhat articulate. And she said,
Uh-huh.
no, it's not that kind of speech. It's public speaking. And I said, no, 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 not doing that. No, 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 not happening. And she said, just try it.
Mhm.
I feel like it's something that you could do in a major way. Okay. So I go. And the very first speech that I gave was on Star Wars, my favorite movie at the time. And I hated my speech. I hated being up there. I hated everything about it. It was awful. At the end of the class, Mr. Roach had me stay after. And he was kind of a curmudgeony, crotchety old guy
Mhm.
and I thought, what in the world did I do to get myself in trouble? I stay after, and he says, listen, I think you could be one of the most talented people I've ever met in my life. After that speech, give me a
Mhm.
break, right? He said, Saturday morning, we have a school bus coming here at 7 a.m. I'd love for you to be here and go with us down to San Diego State. We have a speech tournament down there. And he said, I just love it if you just come down, ride with us, come down, watch everything, and then come back. If you're not interested, I won't bother you again. I won't ask you again. But I'd love to get your feedback, see what you think. I went down there, Tim, and I was absolutely convinced that I could do so much better than what those people were doing. Oh
Uh,
my goodness gracious. And it was like, okay, I'm in. I started winning and winning and winning. And all 4 years I was in speech and debate. And I was one of the top ranked competitive speakers in high school
mhm.
when I graduated. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. I loved the competition. I loved everything about it. Mr. Roach put me on a path that nobody else could have. And
So this is all your mother's fault.
it's all my mother's fault.
Yeah.
1000%. And we're still
Your
blaming
whole
her.
career is your
We're
mother's
still
fault.
blaming her, right? So yeah, yeah. And my mother-in-law was a teacher for 30 years,
Uh-huh.
bless her heart. And, um, I'm big into education. I just recently was hired as an adjunct instructor for a local college. My lifelong dream of teaching professionally has come true in the
That's
last
great.
like 3 weeks.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Congratulations.
So
I think
very,
it's
very excited about it.
yeah, I think it's interesting how often the impetus for speaking and learning to speak well is giving a really bad speech
Yeah.
in one head. I definitely had a seminal experience for me doing that as well. Mine came later in politics,
Mhm.
um, but I can remember the first public speaking I did as an adult,
Mhm.
and doing terribly, just really embarrassingly awful, and being determined that I was never gonna repeat that again.
Yeah. And you know, I don't know how to explain how bad I was that day.
Mhm.
Um, I don't think there's words for that, to be honest with you. But I can tell you this, it absolutely completely changed my life
Yeah.
and reached me in a way that nobody else could have. I'm convinced of it. And it it really was an amazing pivot in my life. And can't thank him enough ever. So okay, so thank you for asking though. That was awesome. So so you graduate high school,
Mhm.
you go to college and you play football in college. What position did you play in college?
I was an outside linebacker. I played running back in high school. I got to college, and we had a lot of running backs, and I showed up, and they said, "Hey, Tim, nice to see you. You're huddling with the defense." And so it was defensive end and outside linebacker, and which was great because my job was to hit people and knock them down. And
What was the so hold on just like so talk
yeah,
about the juxtaposition of you were running from all the defenders for all those years and now you are one. Talk about that for a second.
well, my first response was absolutely no way. No, not a chance. This is not a good
Ah,
choice.
I
Right?
love this.
You've obviously made a mistake, right? And we need to reconsider that.
Yeah. I
And
don't
what
think
I
you
was
understand. I need to
was
compete for the running back position.
yes. What I was gently told was we actually do understand our business,
Mhm.
and and we're pretty sure we're doing the right thing here. And so, thank you very much. But you can go over there
That is
and
wild.
do that. And so,
That is just wild. What college
yes,
was it? What university?
Brown University.
Brown, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
and
awesome.
great experience. Great experience. Um, and uh, I'd run track all through junior high and high school,
Mhm.
and really loved it, but was just not competitive at the college level quite. And so, um, had given it up and just focused on football, and um, was it was definitely competing in sports was a big part of my life, all the way through growing up, from showing horses, traveling around Kansas and Nebraska and Oklahoma and Missouri, showing horses from one show to another, or competing, to track meets, to football games, to everything else. It was always a core part of what I did growing up.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's cool.
That and books in school, and and scouting. I had this really traditional upbringing.
Why Brown?
Brown was a family school,
Oh,
and my grandfather went to Brown, my great grandfather went to Brown, my great great grandfather went to Brown,
wow.
going back a long way,
No
and
kidding.
and not a bad school.
Yeah,
Um, but it gave me a sense of connection
yeah,
to my family and history that maybe you don't get when you're traveling around in the army all the time.
yeah.
And uh, and I can remember, while I was there, when I moved into my first freshman college dorm,
Yeah.
and I looked at the address, and the address was on Waterman Street, which was named after my family, my mother's family.
Wow.
And it
Incredible.
it 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 it, it hit home. And it also, early on, I went to go visit a cemetery in
Mhm.
Providence where Brown is, and
Mhm.
because my grandmother had suggested I go there. And
Mhm.
so I went to see it, and there was a family plot there,
Hmm.
with with members of my family going back many generations that were there. And this may sound morbid, but it really wasn't. I remember sitting there and being a young kid in college, trying to figure out, what am I supposed to be studying? What am I going to be? Where am I going to go? And it was revelatory to see that generations of my ancestors, had all had the same thoughts, had all had the same concerns and worries and questions, and they all ended up in the same place.
That's awesome.
So it provided an ease to those
Yeah.
thoughts that I wouldn't have had otherwise.
Had to have felt, well, let me ask you, the feeling of legacy. How did that
Mhm.
feel?
It gave me a sense of place,
Yeah.
that um, that made it easier
Yeah.
to begin to think about, I'm here for my moment,
Mhm.
and what am I going to contribute during this time that I'm here?
Right.
Because I'm going to end up back at the same place as all the rest of them, right?
Mhm.
So how to make use of your time, and it's just a choice how to make use of your time. And and I think that sense of legacy for some people can feel restrictive.
Mhm.
For me, it was just the opposite. For
Yeah.
me, it
Sounds like
it
it.
it put me in a place, and gave me a foundation from where to go. And I'm talking to you today from our family farm, up in Vermont, and where as a boy, I when we visited here, I slept in the same bed that my grandfather was born in.
Mhm.
And for a kid who spent all his growing up years moving around from place to place, it offered a sense of stability and place that otherwise would not have had.
Almost an anchor.
Yeah,
Really
it
cool.
still does. And now, when I brought my own kids here,
Mhm.
I would take them upstairs, and there's a board on the wall upstairs, where for generations we have marking the height of our children as they grew up. And so I would go mark the height of my kids when they were little and as they got bigger. And next to them, I would see mark the height of their grandmother and their great grandmother and their great grandfather and everybody else as they grew up. And so it offered a really interesting frame of how to think about our lives.
Amazing. Absolutely cool.
Yeah.
So what did you major in college at Brown?
I got a degree in economics, and I
Okay.
did work in economics and engineering.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you graduate Brown. Where do
Mhm.
you go from there?
I graduated from Brown, and I moved to Boston,
Mm-hmm.
and I went to work for a firm that does strategic planning for companies around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a way of, at the time, as a way of getting a job, getting started,
Mm-hmm.
moving in, and it was fascinating work, looking at at how economic changes, technology changes, market changes would affect businesses, large businesses. Um, Ultimately, I was lured away from that. A good family friend had been the head of OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, um, uh, in the White House, and he had recruited me and said, there's a presidential campaign coming up, and you need to go do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I got this great job. I'm getting paid more than I ever thought I would get paid. And he said, yeah, you still need to go do that. And 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 those late nights I'd had with him talking about policy and
Mm-hmm.
politics going forward, something clicked, and I left my job. I joined the campaign. I moved down to North Carolina, and I was a campaign operative managing the Charlotte, North Carolina, and the 10 counties around it, trying to build a campaign.
Wow.
And it was a moment that was transformative for me,
Yeah.
because suddenly the world of ideas was something I could put to work with people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's where I had my own first experience of giving a really, really, really bad speech. Um, Standing on a tractor trailer bed, in an outdoor park on a hot day in North Carolina,
Yeah.
with a few hundred senior citizens, um, looking at me, trying to explain why they should vote for the Democratic ticket.
Right.
And, uh, and I had gone in there prepared a 20-minute speech that covered foreign policy and economics and everything else. And I knew I was in trouble when the person who came up before me was a local member of Congress, and I couldn't understand why band members were getting up on the tractor trailer. Turns out he was a gospel singer,
Yeah.
and he got up and just said, "Hey, you know me, and good to see you all, and Joe, good to see you, and Mary Beth, good to see you, and please remember to vote for me." And then he sang songs,
Mm-hmm.
sang great songs, and they all loved it. And then I got up there, and I'm and all
And
I'm
you
doing
had
is
to
like
follow that.
I've had to follow that. I'm flipping through my speech, going, "How do I get rid of this? How do I get rid of this? How do I get rid of this?" And I get to the end, and you want to engage the audience, so I say, "Great, we're done now. I struggled through that. Let's have some questions. Anybody have anything to say?" And no one says anything for a moment,
Oh
of course.
no.
And then this old guy in the front just kind of raises his hands, and I said, "Great, I got some engagement." And he looked at me and says, "Y'all ain't from around here, are you?" And that
Whoops.
was my introduction to speaking. And
Ain't
this
nothing like
this
baptism by fire,
exactly.
Wow.
But I learned quickly, and
Yeah.
I spent the next few months traveling around North Carolina as an organizer, but also as a speaker,
Yeah.
and learned to find a way to connect with people,
Yeah.
and to connect the ideas that they were reading about in the newspapers at the time, or seeing on television, with what was happening in their lives.
Gotcha.
And it was a terrific experience.
So we're going to take a break real quick. And when we come back, we're going to talk about specifically what it is that you're doing and the amazing things you're doing at GreenFi.
Great.
We'll be right back. Did you know there's an app that has no side effects that allows you to use sound waves to tell your brain what you want it to do? It's called newcalm.com, and it's amazing. It literally uses sound waves. If you want to tell your brain to go to sleep, if you want to tell your brain to recover, if you want to tell your brain to put you in peak physical state, if you want to tell your brain to focus, if you want to tell your brain to take a power nap, you can do all of these things and more with newcalm.com. Go to newcalm.com today, promo code Mike15. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go there today. We're back with Tim Newell with GreenFi. And one of the things that we were talking about before we went on break was we were talking about a presidential campaign that you were a part of, and you were in North Carolina, and you had an amazing first experience in public speaking.
Amazingly bad.
Amazingly bad, right? Something you'll never forget. It's sort of emblazoned in your memory, right? And we were talking about how you were able to then spend time with people and relate to them and talk to them about these different policy issues that related to them specifically and why they should vote for your candidate. So here's the $64,000 question. Who was the candidate you were campaigning for?
Walter Mondale.
Walter Mondale. I love
Yes.
Walter Mondale.
You can judge from that how successful we all were.
Yeah, well, hey, you got to get in the fight,
You
right?
got to get in the fight.
You got to get in there.
My next campaign was successful. I went from there and worked for Pat Leahy,
Yeah.
the senator from Vermont, who great leader, who served in the Senate for many years, was the Senate pro tem, and came up in Vermont and worked on his first reelection campaign.
Yeah.
And had an amazing time traveling around the state and again doing the same thing. How do you connect with people? How do you understand what matters to them?
Yeah.
And how do you translate that into ideas that they can agree with and consume, in a sense?
Yeah, and this is why you should vote for our candidate, right? This is
why you should vote for our candidate.
Right. Here are the benefits. Yeah.
How do you make it matter to individual people?
Exactly.
Left there, went down to Washington, and thinking that I was going to go to work for Pat Leahy in D.C. as a senator, and was recruited by a member of Congress named Norm Mineta. And Norm he was from San Jose, represented essentially Silicon Valley. And I'd had spent some time in technology, before getting into politics, and he had a job for a legislative assistant to focus on technology and the economy and the policies that we needed. And great guy. He had a huge impact on my life. Had a huge impact on many people's lives. I really learned about the Constitution of the United States working for him, and how it can have an impact. He was Japanese American. He had been with his family, interned after World War II when Japanese Americans were put in internment camps, and he led the legislation to redress those internments for Japanese American citizens of the United States. It is something that I think reverberates today, as we're struggling with how to think about civil rights and how to think about how our nation will treat all of its citizens. But my role there was really focusing on technology and the role of technology in our economy, and the role of technology in advancing science and our understanding. So that's how I spent my time with him. I worked there 5 years, and really got to see the the legislative process and how government works. Got to dive into the budgets for technology, for space, for healthcare, et cetera. And then picked up and moved down Constitution Avenue to the White House staff, and spent the next 5 years working for Bill Clinton and Al Gore on the White House staff as the deputy director of the Science and Technology Office in the White House. And
How was that?
it was intense, and it was an amazing experience, where you get up and you read the paper and you know what your day is going to be like.
Mhm.
But my job was managing the flow of policy up to the vice president and the president
Mhm.
on everything science and technology.
Wow.
And so that could range from climate change to internet and e-commerce to national security issues. And it was a wide range of issues, very fascinating. You're drinking from the fire hose all the time. Um, it's intensely hard work, and but very, very fulfilling in that sense. And
Absolutely.
it was a
Absolutely.
great time to be doing that. Um,
So what year did you leave the White House?
I left the White House in 1997.
Okay. So you weren't there when the 2000 election happened,
I was not there when the 2000 election happened. I had gone through their reelect,
had you?
and my job during the reelection and honor was I was really the liaison with the technology community and the venture capital community
Right.
and the others, out in Silicon Valley, and organizing CEOs and investors, venture capitalists, around the president's economic plan and vision.
So quick question for you. What was the number one thing you learned working with Al Gore?
Two things I would say. The first is that you can take on really big, hard issues and make a difference. Because that was something that for the vice president, for Al, was the signature of how he worked. I thought
Mhm.
was this is someone who took on nuclear proliferation.
Mhm.
This is someone who took on climate change. This is someone who took on the reorganization of government. These were huge, hard issues, and what he showed is that you can engage with them,
Mhm.
and if you bring in the right people and you're pretty relentless, that you can actually make a big difference.
Yeah.
And I carried that with me on into the rest of the work that I've done, and it was something that really came from seeing him.
So same question. What's the single most important thing that you learned working with Bill Clinton?
A lot of things to learn from Bill Clinton, but if I had to pick one thing, it was it was what made Bill Clinton a once in a generation politician.
Yeah.
And what that is that he was as comfortable having a debate about the intricacies of policy
Mhm.
at any level, um, and its impact on the economy, on the country, on national security, on on the on the future of the country,
Mhm.
as he was equally comfortable discussing the political ramifications of that down to a precinct in Chicago
Wow.
or New York or anywhere else. And it was that combination which was the understanding of the policy choices that needed to be made, the very real and large and sometimes abstract
Mhm.
choices that need to be made about the
Yeah.
future of the country and where we're going to go, and then the impact of that on the perceptions and the needs of individual voters.
Yeah.
And it was that combination of policymaker and politician
Mhm.
coming together that seems like that's what it always should be,
Yeah.
but it's very rare in my experience that it happens in quite that way.
We talk a lot on this podcast about connection.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anybody on the planet that connected as well as he does. He just flat out knows how to connect with people. He's just good with them.
He does it very naturally.
Yeah.
And very effectively. Part of my job was bringing in CEOs from the technology industry, venture investors from the technology industry, people who are generally pretty focused on growing their businesses, and often very large businesses, and naturally in a way pretty conservative. And Bill Clinton wasn't the most likely politician for them to rally behind. And again and again, what I saw was sitting down with a group of those business leaders, each of them being leaders in their own right, important leaders in their own right, who would spend an hour or an hour and a half sitting over lunch talking through education or economic policy or something else. And when they left and when they walked out of the room, they were ready to reelect him right then and there.
Yeah.
Because he had a way of connecting with them and connecting to the things that they were concerned with. And it didn't mean he just told them what they wanted to hear. Not at all. In fact, there were some times when he was being delivered a message that said, you really need to change your approach to how we handle this. And I'm thinking of something like encryption, which is how much encryption will we allow on our computers, and what should the government's role be in being able to break that encryption? An issue that has two sides, throughout it. And I remember him listening to very, very strong arguments by the technology industry that we absolutely had to have strong and unbreakable encryption in order to build our economy and have our products sold overseas, et cetera. And him listening to all that and then simply saying, I understand that, but let me tell you how I view it. And then him talking through the national security implications and what he hears from his Secretary of Defense and what he hears from his intelligence community, and bringing them into that process, and then saying, I'm sorry, but that's not something we're going to be able to do, and here's why. And having them basically say, understand, we got it, and be prepared to move forward. It was not something that you see every day at all.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the most talented people on the planet, for sure, especially when it comes to politics. So you end up at GreenFi. Talk about GreenFi for a second. Obviously, well, tell us about GreenFi.
So GreenFi is a financial services company,
and
financial services brand for consumers,
right?
And where you can go and get banking services and investment services. And there are two differences between GreenFi and the bank that you probably have your funds deposited at. And the first difference is we're not a bank.
Right.
We're a financial technology company. So we partner with banks and we partner with investment firms and others to bring products to consumers. The second reason is that all of our products that we work and build and curate for those are all built natively to be climate friendly.
Right.
And that may be an odd thing to think, wait, how's my bank account climate friendly?
Right.
And to understand the connection between your money and the climate, you really have to dive into a couple of facts, which is if your money is deposited at any one of the 10 largest banks in the US, which is, I would posit, probably where yours is and probably where most people's are, up to 30% of those funds are used to support the fossil fuels industry.
Okay.
That's the structure of our banking system.
Right.
And so you may, if you care about the climate, which many, many people do, if you care about the climate, you may be taking a lot of actions in your own life in order to try to have an impact. You may put solar on your roof, or you may be driving an electric vehicle, or you may be really focused on recycling, or you may switch from a gas stove to electric stove. There's a whole range of things you can do to really try to have an impact. Um, but you can do all those things, but quietly your bank account is undoing all of the good that you're doing. And for the average US consumer, the most important thing they can do in terms of having an impact on the climate is not putting solar on your roof, though that's a good thing to do and you should do it. It's not driving an electric vehicle, though that's a good thing to do and you should do it. It is not taking any of those kinds of actions. The most important thing for most consumers you can do is to move your money, to make sure that where you're depositing, where you're investing, how you're spending your money matches your values. And why is it important? Well, it's important because over the last 10 years, what has emerged is about 40% of the US population has come to really believe that climate is one of their strongest concerns. And so there is 100 million consumers in the US, 100 million adults in the US, who really look at this as a core issue for them and are seeking ways to do something about it. But the information can be conflicting, or it may feel like I have to change my life, or it may feel like the claims that I'm hearing from companies are misleading, or I don't trust them. They're greenwashing. And what I really wanted to do was to be able to provide consumers with a very easy way to take action, just in how they deposit and how they spend their money and where they invest their money. And that's the basis for GreenFi.
So GreenFi gives back to green causes, correct?
It's the heart of what we do is we do give back to green causes, but that's not the heart of what we do.
Yeah.
So the heart of what we do is that we pledge to you that when you deposit funds with us, that none of those funds will go to support the fossil fuels industry.
Gotcha.
And why is that important? Well, because that is, and all of us know, that is the source of climate change. That is what is fueling the rise in temperature. And we all know we have to transition off of fossil fuels onto something else. And so this is a way of knowing that, okay, when you're in a hole, stop digging.
Yeah.
Right. At least don't contribute. Right. So my funds are not going to be used to support oil and gas and coal and pipelines, et cetera. So that's the first thing we do. The second thing we do is that we offer our customers a way to, every time they swipe their card, like the debit card, we plant trees around the world.
Wow.
And last year, our customers supported planting more than 4 million trees.
Wow.
And right now we're planting a tree about every 7 seconds.
Wow.
And so just while we're talking today, Mike, we'll plant our customers will support us planting more than 500 trees.
That's incredible.
And so we're reforesting about 2.5 football fields a day, every day.
Incredible.
And so you're stopping digging. You're no longer putting funds to invest in the fossil fuel industry, and then you're actively doing the kinds of reforestation work and investment in trees and forests that will take carbon out of the air and support our ecosystems.
That was exactly what I was about to ask you. So for people that are not familiar with how climate change works, and specifically how planting trees can help us, trees generate oxygen, right? They scrub the air of CO2 gases, correct?
Correct.
And so go ahead.
So you're just by where you have your money, just by how you are banking and investing, you're contributing to removing the carbon from the air.
Yeah.
And it sounds like, oh, that's a small thing. It's not a small thing.
Right.
When you multiply it by the number of people doing it, and for the average consumer, just working with our products, we can take care of the majority, and sometimes all, depending on how you do it, of their personal carbon impact, personal climate impact, just by how they do this. And at the same time, we offer them products to let them do well financially. So you deposit your funds with us, and you can get up to 3% interest on your savings.
Wow.
Um, the focus is allow our customers to do well and do good for the planet at the same time.
Yeah. It's a win-win all the way around.
It is. That's the intent.
I cannot thank you enough for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. I apologize for the technical glitch. This was a great time. I loved every second of it, and I'm so glad that we had an opportunity to meet. Tim, thank you again for being here.
Thank you so much, Mike. It was a real pleasure to be here. I look forward to talking to you again.
This was awesome. Thanks, bud.
Thank
Can I ask you a question? Did you know that there's a technology that uses sound waves that'll tell your brain what to do? There literally is. It's called newcalm.com. It can tell your brain to heal, tell your brain to sleep, tell your brain to do all kinds of things. It can get you fired up. It can be a pre-workout. Newcalm.com. And the promo code is Mike15. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go today.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at the Mike Litton Experience.